Fabulous. Okay, so the main thing I want to say is I'm not the information that I'm giving you today is not based on. I'm not a legal advisor, so um, you know, if you need anything, if you have any issues, any questions that are on the legal side of things, as we're talking about pensions, holiday pay, and sick pay, you will be able to get the answers from them, from your employee's liability insurance, possibly your payroll, depending on how friendly they are. But yeah, today we're talking about managing pensions, holiday pay, and sick pay. One thing I've noticed, talking to a lot of different employers, is that a lot of employers, not a lot, but some employers don't realise the fact that we are essentially like any other business. You know, we're the same as Sainsbury's, we've just got a much smaller amount of employees. You know, we're the same as your local corner shop. So a lot of people don't realise that employment laws and regulations apply to us. You know, it doesn't matter whether you're an individual employer, PA employer, or whether you are running, you know, an empire of shops. All of the same rules and regs do apply. Today, I'm going to focus on pensions, sick pay, and holiday pay. Before we look at each topic individually, it's important to acknowledge something. Many PA employers employ PAs using direct payments or through personal health budgets. You may not have a background in HR or payroll. You may never have intended to become an employer in the formal sense, but employment laws do still apply. We're going to start with managing workplace pensions. Workplace pensions are one of the most misunderstood areas of PA employers. That's from the information I found online. Feel free to quote me if that's wrong. Under auto employment law, every employer in the UK, even if they employ just one person, has duties under the Pensions Act. Your responsibilities include assessing whether your PA qualifies for auto enrolment, enrolling eligible staff into a qualifying pension scheme, paying employer contributions, deducting employee contributions, completing your declaration of compliance. Also, if you're a new employer or looking to become an employer, you will also have the task of deciding on what pension company you want to go with. Now, I'll be honest and say one of the most popular ones tends to be Nest. It's also the cheapest. So, well, it was the last time I checked. So that's going back to 2023. So it could have changed. But yeah, the thing is to remember is if you are looking at actually having to pick which payroll you go with, I was really anxious and I found it really stressful. But something my employer's liability insurance told me was just breathe. At the end of the day, they all do the same job. You're not going to get it wrong. It just, you know, just like you could, we all have different payroll companies. Essentially, they all do the same things, so you're not really going to get it wrong. Hi, Esther. We're currently recording and we've started my speech. Unfortunately, you've got me today because our speaker was unavailable. Just because we've just started, I'll just recap that we are discussing pensions, sick pay, and holiday pay. And our responsibilities under the Pensions Act include assessing whether your PA qualifies for auto enrolment, enrolling eligible staff into a qualifying pension scheme, paying employer contributions, deducting employee contributions, completing your declaration of compliance. And also, if you're new to being an employer, picking the payroll company. But as I was saying, most payroll companies are much of the same. You know, they all do what's on the tin. So just crack on. Doesn't really matter whether you have Heinz beans or Sainsbury's own, essentially. Although I know a lot of people will argue that that's a very bold statement. So who qualifies? To be automatically enrolled, PAs must meet all of the following conditions: age between 22 and state pension age, earn over 10,000 per year before tax, status be classed as a worker or an employee, and also you may need to speak to your pension provider should your PA have any existing pensions as well, other workplace pensions. Earning thresholds for 2024 to 2025 and 2025 to 2026 are as follows. The earnings trigger 10,000 per year, £833 per month, £192 per week. Lower earnings limit, £6,240 per year, no contributions on earnings below this. Upper earnings limit, £50,270 per year, contributions stop at earnings above this. How it works: if you're eligible, your PAs are eligible, you as their employer would automatically put them into the pension scheme. Both you and them would contribute with the minimum total contributions of 8% of your qualifying earnings, and that's within the lower earnings limit I just shared and the upper earnings limit. Changes: the 10,000 earnings trigger and the earnings bands have been maintained for recent tax years 2024, 2025, 2025, 2026, meaning they haven't increased with inflation in those terms, in real terms. However, that can change. We are about to start a new tax year, so the figures I'm sharing are current to a point, but that could change. You must then automatically enroll your PA into a scheme. Even if your PA tells you they don't want a pension, they don't want to be in the scheme, you must still enroll them at first. They can then opt out, but that decision must be theirs and occur after you've enrolled them. So your PA can't just turn around and go, do you know what, I don't want my pension. You still have to enroll them and they have to opt out following the official channels. And that's really important. I've been caught out. I've had a PA turn around and tell me, no, I don't want to do the pension. So I didn't. And then I got in trouble. So essentially it was an angry letter. I played dumb. We liaised with my employers' liability insurance, helped me, talked me through it. And then I spoke to them. The issue was resolved. As an employer, you must contribute to the pension. That is not optional. Also, something that a lot of employers don't know is it is a legal requirement from your funding body that they have to cover all the costs relating to being an employer, and that includes your pension. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm fully aware that you may have to fight that one. Some people do, some people don't. As we all know, we all live in a postcode lottery, unfortunately. But technically, they do have to cover you, and that does include covering your contributions to the pension and the pension company's costs. Minimum contributions are set by law and are based on qualifying earnings. Both you and the PA contribute. Failure to comply can result in warning letters and fines from the pensions regulator. That's who I got mine from. And those fines can escalate quickly, so please do get in touch with them. Now, I understand this can be really daunting, but here's the practical advice. Use a good payroll provider. Some employers like to use a payroll provider that has a lot of experience with people that employ PAs. So it's entirely up to you if you go with one that doesn't have experience or does. You need to keep clear records, respond promptly to letters from the pensions regulator, reassess staff each year as required. Now, for me, that gets done automatically. I don't actually have to do anything. My payroll just automatically process the reassessment each year. Think of pensions not only as a legal duty, but as part of being a responsible employer. Pensions help PAs build financial security in the future. That security contributes to retention, stability and professionalism, and stable employment relationships benefit everyone. Your employer's liability insurance can answer any questions on the legal side of things and the figures I've given. Please note those figures are the ones that I can get hold of at this moment in time. They may very well change in the next tax year. And if any of that is confusing, feel free to ask me any questions. And the areas that I don't know about, which I don't know everything, so there are some, then I recommend you speak to your employer's liability insurance and or payroll. They can be really helpful. Next, we're going to talk about managing sick pay. Most PAs are entitled to statutory sick pay if they meet the eligibility requirements. To get UK statutory sick pay, you generally need to earn an average of at least £125 per week. Again, these figures are based on what I can get hold of now. They will change, I'm sure, in the future, so don't quote me on that one. You must be classed as an employee, have worked for the employer, and be sick for 4 or more consecutive days. If you earn less than this, if your PAs earn less than £125 a week, they may qualify for new style employment and support allowance. So I'd tell them, recommend your PAs to contact the new style ESA and find out about that. Key requirements of statutory sick pay earnings: earn at least £125 per week on average. This is the lower earnings limit for the 2025-2026 tax year. Employment status: be an employee, including part-time agency or 0 hours contracted workers. Work: have done some work for the employer. Illness duration: be sick for at least 4 days in a row. This includes non-working days. What you receive amount: the rate is £118.75 per week, and that's up to date from April 2025, so that will change, I'm sure, possibly this year or next. Waiting period: you don't get paid for the first 3 days you're off sick. These are the waiting days. Duration: statutory sick pay can be paid for up to 28 weeks. And again, if you are required, if your PA qualifies for statutory sick pay, that is something that comes out of our budgets, your care budget. So that's something that you want to talk to your employer's liability insurance about, with regards for processing statutory sick. And also, if you don't have the funds in your budget, you want to talk to your funding body as well. Again, as our funding bodies have a duty of care that they need to cover all of the costs relating to being an employer. However, as we all know, it's a postcode lottery, and sometimes we have to fight our tushies off for that. So I'm aware that it isn't always very easy for us to access, but technically it's something that we are entitled to access. As the employer, you are responsible for paying statutory sick pay at the current government rate, recording sickness accurately, keeping evidence such as fit notes when required, providing an SSP1 form if statutory sick pay is not payable. One key point: statutory sick pay is the legal minimum. Unless your contract states otherwise, your PA is not required to pay an enhanced sick pay. This is why a written employment contract is crucial, and it should clearly outline how sickness must be reported, when medical evidence is required, whether only SSP statutory sick pay is payable. Without clarity in the contract, misunderstandings can arise, and this can lead to disputes. Another important point is fairness and consistency. If you employ more than one PA, you must apply sickness procedures consistently to all staff. Treating employees differently without justification can create legal risk. Work practice includes keeping written records, having return to work conversations, monitoring patterns of absence, maintaining professional boundaries. Sickness management is not about mistrust, it's about clarity. Clear processes protect you from overpaying or paying incorrectly, and they protect your PA from unfair treatment. Next, we're going to discuss managing holiday pay correctly. Holiday pay is probably the area where most mistakes happen. All employees are legally entitled to 5.6 weeks of paid leave per year. For someone working regular hours, this is simple to calculate. I personally use the direct.gov calculator for working out holiday entitlement. I also, in order to keep track of it, my payroll have created spreadsheets so that I can calculate my bank staff's annual leave and my paid staff, and I can keep track of what they've used and what's left each year. And I use the direct.gov calculator to help me work out annual leave. It's really, really helpful when your staff are, for example, starting midway through tax year and leaving midway through tax year. So it's a really helpful tool. So I really recommend that. Holiday begins accruing from the first day of employment. Part-time workers are entitled to holiday on a pro rata basis. There is no minimum hours threshold to qualify. One of the most common mistakes employers make is misunderstanding how holiday pay should be calculated. Holiday pay should reflect normal pay. If your PA regularly works overtime, that overtime may need to be reflected in holiday pay calculations. Another key rule, you cannot roll up holiday pay into an hourly rate instead of allowing time off. Employees must be allowed to take paid leave. Holiday is a health and safety entitlement. It exists to prevent burnout and protect well-being. You should keep accurate holiday records, encourage leave to be taken, monitor remaining balances, be clear about your holiday year. The other thing that's really important is to also share with for example, my funding body, they don't allow my staff to carry their annual leave into the next year. So say they don't use all of their 5.6 weeks in that tax year. If they don't use it, they lose it. Some funding bodies will allow you to carry over all or some of your PA's annual leave. So that's something you want to talk to your funding body about, and also your employer's liability insurance. They can help you liaise with that. It's also important to understand what happens when employment ends. Unused statutory holiday must usually be paid in the final wage calculation. Conversely, if too much holiday has been taken, deductions may be possible, but only if the contract allows it. Again, you want to check your contract, and if an PA leaves and they've spent too much annual leave, you want it in your contract that they have to pay you the money back. And you can, again, talk to employers' liability insurance about that. They will liaise with you. They will talk to you about all the legal documents, the contracts, and all those kind of things. Clear contracts, clear records, and clear communication. Those three things prevent most problems. Now, I'm going to talk about how annual leave can be worked out for bank or 0 hours contract PAs. Bank staff in the UK accrue pay holiday as they work, generally entitlement to 5.6 weeks of paid leave per year. It is commonly calculated as 12.07% of hours worked and often paid on a rolled up basis, added to each payslip rather than paid during time off. Now, again, please talk to employers' liability insurance about how you are going to work out your bank staff's annual leave. And they can talk you through how to explain it to those PAs, how to do their contract. They'll give you templates and things like that. Accrual. Holiday is earned from the first day of employment. For every hour worked, you earn 12.07% of that hour as holiday pay. For example, 10 hours of work entitles you to 1.207 hours of holiday pay. Roll-up pay. So there's two different ways you can do for bank staff. You can do annual leave pay. The other option is rolled up pay. Many employers pay this 12.07% on top of hourly rate per shift. Again, talk to your employer's liability insurance about this. Talk to your funding body and get all of that agreed. Once you've got it agreed, you can then, going forward, every time you have a bank member of staff, you'll know what you're doing. The other thing that I think is really important is It used to be back in the day that bank 0 hours work PAs didn't get annual leave because it wasn't part of 0 hour contracts. That changed a few years ago. So the one thing I will always say with statutory sick, holiday pay for bank or non-bank staff, pensions, all of that stuff, keep yourself up to date, because unfortunately the regulations and rules, everything and figures all change regularly, and we don't get anyone to tell us. So I was in a situation where I wasn't giving someone annual leave because I was still under the impression bank didn't get it. And once I found out, then I had to, it was a whole thing that we had to deal with and backdate and all that kind of thing. So it's really, really important to ask your employer's liability insurance, have any of the rules changed? And they will keep you up to date. They will keep you up to date with all the latest rules and regs. So what I do is I just touch base with my employer's liability once every 6 months and go, right, have any employment laws changed? Have any bank workers changed? Have any pension, sick, holiday, anything? Has anything changed? And that way, if it is, I can liaise with them to update all of my contracts and records and processes and the way I do everything. And I find that really helpful, because the one thing I will say about employers' liability insurance is, well, in my experience, they won't tell you unless you ask. So to hold yourself off from getting in any trouble, and also all of these figures I've given are really, can be really overwhelming, complicated and confusing. So like I say, these are the latest information that I can find, but absolutely speak to your employer's liability insurance about all of this. Now, let's briefly consider the risks. If pensions are not managed correctly, you risk fines from the pensions regulator. If sick pay is handled incorrectly, you risk disputes, grievances, or claims for unlawful deduction of wages. If holiday pay is miscalculated, you risk tribunal claims that can go back several years. Even simple record keeping errors can become serious if a dispute arises. But I want to say that is why you want to stay up to date with what the rules and regs are, and touch base with your employer's liability insurance every 6 months, or less, every 3 months, whatever, every month, whatever you want, whatever makes you feel better. And they will let you know what rules have changed. You can then check, does this align with how I'm doing things? They can then liaise you. When you manage pay and entitlements correctly, you build trust, increase staff retention, reduce turnover, avoid recruitment stress, and create a more sustainable, stable support for you and your PAs. Final thoughts. Being a PA employer is about independence, choice, and control. It also comes with responsibility. Managing pensions, sick pay, holiday pay correctly is not just about ticking boxes, it's about fairness, legality, and professionalism. When you understand your duties and the right systems are in place, you can create security for your PA, protection for yourself, stability in your support arrangements. Thank you very much. I will now turn off the recording